On October 10th, 2023, a software company named Citrix sent out an urgent warning. They had found a critical flaw in their system, a digital skeleton key that could unlock servers all over the world. They released a patch, a digital lock, to fix it. 6 days later, that unlocked door was kicked wide open at Comcast. For 3 straight days, from October 16th to the 19th, hackers walked right in. They didn't smash windows or trip any alarms. They just downloaded. And by the time they were done, they had the personal information of 36 million people. Your information. This wasn't just a hack. It was a heist made possible by a 6-day delay. And the story of what they took and what Comcast is now paying to make it go away is bigger and messier than you can imagine. The vulnerability the hackers used has a name that sounds like something out of a spy movie: Citrix Bleed. It was a 0-day exploit, meaning it was a secret weapon for hackers that security experts were scrambling to defend against. Think of it like a master key that could open high-security locks on buildings all over the globe. Cybercrime gangs like Lockbit and Black Cat loved it. They used it to hit major law firms, aerospace giant Boeing, and even the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China. And for a few critical days, Comcast became their next target. According to court records, Comcast was warned. Citrix sent out the fix on October 10th. But for reasons that are now the subject of a massive lawsuit, that patch wasn't applied to their servers immediately. That delay created a window of opportunity. And the hackers didn't hesitate. They slipped in, completely undetected at first, and began siphoning out a treasure trove of customer data. So what did they get? It's a deeply personal list. They grabbed usernames and passwords. Now, Comcast is quick to point out the passwords were hashed, which is a form of encryption. But here's the scary part they don't always emphasize. Hashing isn't a magic shield. Depending on the strength of the hash and the password itself, security experts estimate that over 80% of people reuse the same password across multiple websites. Think about that for a second. The password you used for your Xfinity account, is it the same one you use for your email, for your Amazon account, for your bank? The hackers are counting on it. They take these massive lists of usernames and hashed passwords and run automated attacks called credential stuffing, trying that same login combination on hundreds of other popular sites. They didn't just steal your Comcast login. They potentially stole the key to your entire digital life. But they didn't stop there. They also took names, contact information, and the last 4 digits of social security numbers. They took dates of birth. And in what might be the most damaging part of all, they stole the answers to security questions. Questions like, what was the name of your first pet? Or, what city were you born in? These are the very questions designed to prove you are you. In the hands of a hacker, they are the final pieces of a puzzle to take over your identity. They can use this information to call your bank, impersonate you, and reset the very passwords you might have changed after hearing about the breach. Comcast eventually detected the suspicious activity between October 16th and 19th. They closed the door, applied the patch, and brought in cybersecurity firms and law enforcement, like the FBI. But the damage was done. The data was gone. For 36 million current and former customers, their personal information was now out in the wild, likely being bought and sold. You would think a disaster of this magnitude would be a once-in-a-generation failure. A wake-up call so loud it couldn't possibly be ignored. But here's where the story takes an even darker turn. Just when you thought it couldn't get worse, it did. 2 years later, the hackers came back. And this time, they didn't need a sophisticated software flaw. Around January 5th, 2025, a new threat emerged. This time, it wasn't a silent, surgical strike exploiting a code vulnerability. It was a loud, brash, and public assault by a ransomware group calling themselves Medusa. And their way in was depressingly simple: phishing. They sent cleverly disguised emails to Comcast employees. Emails that looked legitimate, urgent, and important. All it took was one employee, maybe having a busy day, maybe a little distracted, to click a malicious link or open a bad attachment. That single click was all Medusa needed. They compromised the employee's credentials, gained a foothold inside Comcast's network, and began moving laterally, grabbing as much data as they could before encrypting systems and demanding a ransom. This wasn't about a patch that was applied too late. This was about the human element. It proves that a company can have billion-dollar firewalls, but its security is often only as strong as its most tired, most unsuspecting employees. And unlike the quiet thieves from 2023, Medusa had a flair for the dramatic. They didn't just steal the data, they bragged about it. They went public, posting on their dark web leak site that they had breached one of America's largest corporations. To prove it, they leaked samples of the stolen data, turning corporate espionage into a public spectacle. It was a high-pressure tactic designed to embarrass Comcast and force them to pay the ransom. We don't know if Comcast paid. Companies almost never disclose that. But we know what Medusa. This second breach created a whirlwind of confusion. News reports started mixing up the two events, conflating the 2023 Citrix Bleed incident with the 2025 Medusa attack. But they were two distinct, catastrophic failures. One was a failure of process, a technical vulnerability left unpatched. The other was a failure of people, a classic phishing scam that still works with terrifying effectiveness. Together, they paint a picture of a company under siege, and one that was failing to protect the data of tens of millions of customers on multiple fronts. So what happens when a company that holds a near monopoly on internet service in many areas fails this badly, not once, but twice? The answer is, you sue them. And that's exactly what happened. Following the 2023 breach, 24 different class action lawsuits were filed against Comcast, all claiming the company was negligent. They argued that Comcast knew about the Citrix Bleed vulnerability, or should have known, and failed to act quickly enough to protect its customers. They accused the company of having inadequate security, and Comcast, for its part, fought back in court. They argued they had robust security practices and didn't violate any laws. They denied all liability. But facing a mountain of lawsuits and a public relations nightmare, they decided to settle. And the number they landed on is staggering. In January of 2026, a federal judge gave preliminary approval to a $117.5 million. It sounds like a huge victory for consumers. But let's break down where that money is actually going. First, the lawyers who fought the case are eligible to take up to 1/3 of the total amount. That's over $39 million in attorney's fees. Then you have the administrative costs of running the settlement itself, which will cost millions more. What's left is for the victims. And what do they get? There are two main options. The first is a simple cash payment, a flat $50 for having your name, date of birth, parts of your social security number, and the answers to your security questions stolen and sold to criminals. You might get $50. The second option is for people who can prove they lost money or time dealing with the breach. You can file a claim for up to $10,000 in reimbursement for out-of-pocket expenses, like credit monitoring services or time spent on the phone with banks. But you have to have receipts and detailed documentation, a hurdle many people won't be able to clear. As part of the deal, Comcast is also offering 3 years of identity protection. This is where the debate gets heated. Is this settlement fair? Critics point out that for a company that made over $120 billion in revenue, a $117 million settlement is a drop in the bucket. It's the cost of doing business. And is $50 really fair compensation for the lifelong risk of identity theft? The fact that your personal data is now permanently compromised. Many victims would say no. They see the lawyers getting a massive payday, while the people who are actually harmed get what amounts to a few free months of internet service. But for Comcast, it allows them to resolve the issue, deny any wrongdoing, and make the problem go away without ever admitting fault. The final approval hearing for this settlement is scheduled for July 7th, 2026, and the deadline to file a claim is August 14th. For the 2025 Medusa breach, the story is still unfolding. The investigation is ongoing, and there are no settlement details yet, but it all adds up to a troubling pattern. This entire saga is about more than just Comcast. It's a story about the fragility of our digital world and the immense power wielded by the companies we entrust with our most sensitive information. It shows how a single unpatched server in a massive corporation can expose millions. It proves that the oldest trick in the book, and it forces us to ask some uncomfortable questions. When a company has a virtual monopoly, what incentive do they have to truly invest in the best possible security? If the penalty for a massive breach is a settlement that amounts to a rounding error on their financial statements, will anything ever fundamentally change? For you, the person watching this, the takeaways are personal and urgent. First, if you are or were an Xfinity customer, you need to find out if you are part of this settlement. There will be a website where you can file a claim, and you absolutely should. I'll leave a link for that in the description as soon as it's publicly available. Second, this is your final warning about password reuse. If you are using the same password for multiple sites, you are living on borrowed time. Get a password manager. It will generate and store unique, complex passwords for every single site you use. It is the single most important thing you can do to protect yourself online. Third, enable two-factor or multi-factor authentication everywhere you can, on your email, your bank, your social media. It adds an extra layer of security, a code sent to your phone that stops hackers in their tracks, even if they have your password. The hackers who stole Comcast's data are counting on you not doing these things. In the end, Comcast agreed to pay $117.5 million to close the chapter on their 2023 disaster. They are bolstering their defenses against phishing to prevent a repeat of 2025. But for the 36 million people whose data was stolen, this story doesn't have an ending. Their information is still out there, a permanent digital ghost that can come back to haunt them at any time. Comcast may have paid to turn the page, but the risk if you want to stay ahead of the next big breach and learn how to protect yourself, make sure you're subscribed. Don't forget to hit the like button and check back soon for our latest videos. Stay safe out